And during the period of the Cantonist, which is in Russia, the very famously known, they would snatch young children, young boys, from their parents' homes when they were very young. And then they would transition into the Tsar's army in a way that they would remove like any sort of religion, any belief to anything else. They had to go and they brainwashed them. They actually worked when they were very young. So they were like under 10 years old. They would go and they would basically grab them away from their parents and brainwash them that there's nothing else matters other than the Tsar's army. So they built soldiers. They built like these super soldiers from when they're very, very young. Now, there was a group of boys that were captured, and a lot of these boys were Jews. Now, this is where it is also very famously known as a Tinok Shenishba, where you have a Jew that's taken at a very young age, and he's brought into the Tsar's army, and he doesn't even know that he's Jewish. And he lives in his entire life that he has absolutely no idea that he's connected to Judaism, and that's why they take them when they're very young. So there was a group of boys that were taken by the Tsar's army at a very young age, that to try to go and convince them to be, atheist and to be like believe in nothing else other than the Russian army. That's the only power that you need to fight for. That's the only thing that you need to live for. But there was one boy amongst this group that was very, very strongly devoted to his religion. Why? Because he remembered that when he was taken away by his parents, his mother and his father were crying, and they were crying one thing: don't forget that you're Jewish. Please don't forget that, because they knew what would happen. And these boys were placed in a certain farm in the country, that the farmer's job was to work them to the bone, but also to go and brainwash them into like, there's only the army, there's nothing else that you need to worry about, all religion is nonsense, and just like implementing them atheistic ideas, just like get them away from everything else other than focus on one thing. And every night, this one boy would go and gather all his friends, and he would speak to them about Emunah, he would speak to them about God, he would speak to them about Torah. And he didn't know much about it, but he said, don't forget who we are, and don't forget where we came from. Now, the army general came over to check upon the boys and see how they're doing, and the farmer says, listen, I'm trying. Every day we're doing the routines, we're doing what we've planned, we're doing everything on the curriculum, but there's one guy that keeps on ruining everything. He keeps on speaking to them about religion. He keeps on speaking to them about God, and they're holding strong with it. I don't know what to do. So the general goes and calls over this boy. And this was at the end of their seminar at this farm, where meanwhile the next day they were going to be implemented into the Tsar's army. And the general goes over to him and says, listen, he says, I know what you've been doing, and I'm going to give you an ultimatum. Either you renounce your religion and you join the Tsar's army, or we're going to kill you. Penalty is death if you don't renounce your religion tomorrow at the ceremony. So this kid was very shaken about it. He's like, what am I going to do? This is my religion, this is what I believe in. And he goes over and he the entire night he's going back and forth, sleeping, and he couldn't sleep, waking up. Now, finally, the next morning he walks into the entire ceremony. And he's so confident. He walks up over there, like smiling, bright, like shining, ready to take on the day. And he walks up, and the Tsar goes over to him. The Tsar was there, like everybody was there, and they say, "Are you ready to renounce your religion and take upon the Russian army?" And he says, "I would love to. I really would love to be a soldier." He says, "But I can't. I am, I'm maimed. I am, I'm injured. I can't serve in the Tsar's army." And the guards are like, "What are you talking about?" And on the desk was a knife. And he grabs the knife, he puts his hand down, and he slams the knife on his fingers. And the fingers and his hand separate. And the kid sees the blood, passes out. And he's going in and out of consciousness. Meanwhile, they bandage him up, they rush him to the hospital. He's in and out of consciousness for like 3 days. 3 days later, he finally comes to, and he is so surprised and shocked to see who is sitting by his bedside. It's the Tsar himself. And he sees him, he gets up over there, he has his entire hand is bandaged. And the Tsar says, listen, I have to ask you. He says, where did you get that strength? He says, it's so bad for you to serve me, to serve the Tsar's army, that you were willing to cut off your fingers in order to serve me. He's like, where does a young boy like that get his strength? So the boy goes and he says, listen, he says, I'll be honest with you. He says, and he tells him the whole story. He says, your general told me that either I have to renounce my religion, or I have to go and I have to, death penalty, die. So I was very troubled, but I didn't know what to do. And I was tossing and turning all night. I didn't know what am I going to do. And eventually I said, you know what? I'm going to give in. I'm not going to give myself my life up for it. I'll give in and then I'll figure it out. And I fell asleep. After I made my decision, I fell asleep. And then when I fell asleep, I had a dream. And in the dream, I was in this rapid stream where I was falling down, and it was very, very dangerous, and I felt like I was going to die. And then I saw a chain that was floating in the water. So I went and I grabbed that chain. And as I grabbed that chain, I saw that the chain was attached to the tree trunk, around by the bay. And I wanted to go, and I wanted to save myself. And I started to go, and I started to pull myself up. And I saw that each of these chains were inscribed a name. And I saw my grandfather's name over there, and I saw the next chain was my father, and the last chain was me. And as I was looking at that last chain, I saw that chain was very brittle, it was about to break. And I realized that this chain is my connection to my Judaism, to my ancestral heritage, to who I am and who I belong. And I realized that I'm about to give everything up. And if I give everything up, then I'm going to go and I'm going to drown, and that's going to be the end of me. And I figured, in my dream, I went and I decided, I'm not giving it up. I am willing to risk my life. I am not breaking this chain. From my grandfathers, I'm going back. And I decided that I'm going to do whatever it is that I can to go and stay as a Jew. And that's why I went and I cut my fingers off to show that I'm no longer eligible to be in the army, and now I have to be a Jew. And I can be whoever I want. The Tsar was so moved by this that he went and he said, you know what? When you get healed, you're free to go. You don't have to serve in the army. And he went and he was free to go.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.